Is that all you got?
What's good, everybody out there on YouTube? This is your man Shatic Stick dropping some odd frog on this mic. Today we're going to be talking about Final Fantasy VII Remake, and we're going to be talking about, I guess, the little release issue with Final Fantasy VII Remake. Now, before I get you guys up to speed on things, I want to say you should hit that subscribe button. Actually, just hit it already. It would help your boy out a lot. Hit the like button. We're going to try to get this video to 25 likes. Yeah, get us to 25 likes. But anyways, let me get you guys up to speed if you've been living under a rock. Final Fantasy VII Remake, one of the games I never thought would come out this generation especially, was re-announced at the PlayStation State of Play earlier this month, which was actually really big news and rippled throughout more than just the Final Fantasy community, but the gaming community as a whole, because it's a very revered game. Many people love this game, and it's very, people are very attached to it, whether they're Final Fantasy fans or not. Now, if you guys remember when Final Fantasy VII was originally unveiled at, I think it was E3 2016, it was 2015, 2016, one of those. This is one of them, I forgot. Someone in the comment section will say, it was this year, how dare you? I'm sorry, but this video's off the dome, so that's how it's gonna have to be. But Final Fantasy VII Remake was unveiled, and we got news that the game would be episodic. Now, many people have been in uproar about this, many people have been defending it, and I wanted to get my 2 cents on it. So how did I feel about it originally, and how do I feel about it now that Final Fantasy VII has been re-announced? Now, back then I was extremely livid, especially considering that Final Fantasy VII is one of those games that I feel really just needs to be one whole experience, or at least that's how I felt back then. I'll get a little bit more into why I don't think so much like that now, but I believed it was criminal for Square Enix to do this. Now, at the time, all we knew is they were gonna maybe explain some plot points, but that's all we knew. But now, after, you know, sitting down and really looking at the situation and looking at the information we have, I still feel somewhat like that, but I'm more accepting of the idea of having multiple parts if it follows this, you know, format that I'm going to talk about in a second. Now, the Final Fantasy VII Remake episodic release was actually, I think, explained by Nomura in an interview, or somebody in an interview, that it was going to be somewhat comparable to actually the release of the Final Fantasy 13 games, or even the Final Fantasy 10 games, where each part was just going to be a major part in a bigger story. So now that I'm looking at this, is Final Fantasy VII Remake going to be just a retelling, or is it going to be even more than we thought? Now, I think especially with that recent leak that we had, that there's going to be massive overhauls in the story, and there's going to be massive changes in the retelling. Especially since Final Fantasy VII came out, we've had Advent Children and Crisis Core come out within that same time frame. And I think maybe even within some of the events like the Nibelheim flashback in Calm, that they actually might tell that a bit better. Because if you guys remember, the Nibelheim flashback actually conflicts with Crisis Core, because all of the events that were undertaken by Cloud, that Cloud remembered undertaking, were actually undertaken by Zack. Many people have this theory that it was because Sephiroth was controlling them, etc., etc. And I don't think that's the case. I just think it was just a major oversight. And while both games are fantastic games, and Crisis Core really is a game that you should play if you haven't, and I think they should remake, I do think it is imperative that they address this in the Final Fantasy VII canon, because each Final Fantasy universe is its own world, basically, with the few exceptions like Final Fantasy Tactics and Final Fantasy XII taking place in the same universe, and I think Final Fantasy 13 and Type 0 taking place in some weird universe, you know, after Lightning recreated the universe and the world gets destroyed in Type. I don't know, this is Final Fantasy's weird, but just know each one is basically its own individual universe and timeline. So after talking about how I felt back then, and just a lot of stuff that had conflicts, and just my overall thoughts on the Final Fantasy VII story, because I think it's an amazing story, but again, there are conflicts with different pieces of the media. Yuffie and Vincent are especially a part of that, because in the original 7 you did not have to get them, and even when you did get them, it was obvious that they were optional. They were never important to the story, and when they spoke, they never really spoke within context of the crowd. They always said something after everybody was done speaking, or in the middle of it, and nobody would address them. It's actually kind of off-putting when you go back and play it, because I'm replaying Final Fantasy VII now because I'm really hyped for the remake, and this playthrough I decided, hey, I'm gonna get Yuffie and Vincent, and it's just really awkward when you read Yuffie's lines. Like, I remember going to the Golden Saucer, and after everybody was done and Barrett was done telling his backstory, his sad backstory, she's like, I have no sympathy for Barrett because guess what? It's his fault. Barrett is the reason why Shinra came down and did that in his town because he believed in Shinra. And everybody's sitting there like, all right, okay, that was mean, but okay, we'll get on the thing to the Golden Saucer and go. So I think it's better, especially if they're gonna add in more, I guess, main story plots with Yuffie and Vincent, which was according to that leak. If you haven't watched that video on that leak, please go watch it because it's really important. And it actually is, even if it isn't true, I think that's how Final Fantasy VII Remake story-wise may play out, because there would be no reason for them to not expand on plot points, especially if they're making the game episodic, or even add plot points and a lot more side quests. I think being episodic for this game might actually be good, but how many episodes is the question. Many people are thinking that this game is going to be told in episodes like a Telltale's game, which isn't the case. Like, again, I told you the Final Fantasy 13 format, and each game is rough. I think the shortest game's like 30 hours. So even then, that's not bad. I hope it's not 3 games and it's just 2 different games, which was said in that leak, which makes a lot of sense because it says from the beginning to the death of Aerith. And if you haven't played 7, I'm sorry, you have 22 years to beat the game. Spoiler city, boys. And then the second game will take place from after Aerith's death to the end of the game when you fight Sephiroth in the big grand battle and he turns into the one-winged angel, etc, etc. I just think it's a really cool situation when you look at it because people don't think about all the possibilities within context of the Final Fantasy VII universe or the expanded universe outside of just FF7. We even have games like Before Crisis, which I don't know the story to because it was a phone exclusive JRPG. How long is it? I don't really know, but I feel like if it was meaningful enough for it to just exist, maybe, and I think it's canon too, if it was meaningful enough for it to be canon, why not just go ahead and incorporate that into the grander story of FF7 Remake? And if the game is told in 3 volumes like Final Fantasy 13, well, we get, I guess, the beginning of the game from Midgar to Aerith's death, and then a Crisis Core chapter, and then from after Aerith's death until the end of the game. How many chapters are we getting, and are they going to expand on that? Are we going to get an Advent Children chapter? We've never thought about this. Maybe that first volume or that first chapter is just the original game story. I think people aren't thinking outside of the box when they think of these things, because the first game could just be the first game story. Then the next game could be Crisis Core. Maybe we put in that prequel so we get Zack's story because he's really one of the most underrated Final Fantasy protagonists, and it really gave more weight to his character within the Final Fantasy VII universe. And then finally, is the last one gonna be Advent Children? Can they fix Advent Children's story? Because I've watched the original Advent Children. I haven't gotten to sit down and watch the Blu-ray box set, but from what I have heard, Advent Children Complete still doesn't fix that movie story. Because while it was really cool and it's really an enjoyable watch because the animation was especially super far ahead of its time, the action scenes were choreographed really well, and it's just really beautiful to look at. There are just a lot of storytelling problems. Genova, or the 3 different parts of Sephiroth come back for no inherent reason, really. Everybody's fighting, and then Cloud and Sephiroth have this big battle. And while it's really cool, it was kind of just half-baked. They could have done a far better job with that movie, and I genuinely believe that. Even Kingsglaive Final Fantasy 15 made more sense, and that was a prequel to Final Fantasy 15. The game won one of the most absurd plots in the entire Final Fantasy, I guess, spectrum. Kingsglaive, it had a very simple story. It was just about this guy called Nyx, was a Kingsglaive, and he had to save the city. And no matter how you feel about Kingsglaive, whether you love it or hate it, I think the story is just far easier to follow, and it's just told in a far much better manner than Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. Is the story itself better? No, but it's far more comprehensive if you look at it like that. I don't know, those are my 2 cents. That's how I feel about the situation. While I would prefer the game to not be episodic and to just be one really big experience, I think it's actually smarter for the game to be released episodically, considering all the stories within Final Fantasy VII, not just the core game, but the universe itself. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Tell me how you feel about this down in that comment section below. Are you getting Final Fantasy VII Remake? Are you hyped for the game? Is there anything you want me to talk about for Final Fantasy VII Remake? I know you guys have been really watching to the end of these videos, so tell me in that comment section down below. This has been your man Shatic Stick. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter and remember to join the Discord. The links are all in that description down below. Hit that join button. It's only $5 a month. It helps your boy out. You know, your boy's in college. He needs to buy his ramen noodles. Come on, help your boy get his ramen noodles. Those checker chicken bite boxes are $2.50 now. That's too expensive for us college students. But remember, Hot Faraga turns to Cold Blizzaga. Make sure you chill out with some of my other videos. Peace, kiss, kiss.